The President of the United States, Donald Trump, to US media as he walks there to Marine One, the helicopter that transports the United States President. Joining myself and Emily Carver in the studio is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, a pretty extraordinary state of affairs.
Well, it is extraordinary, and there's an explicit warning to Israel. President Trump has said in terms, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it's a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Right, so that is in response to the fact that as we speak, Israeli warplanes are flying over southwestern Syria, heading for Iran in what the Israeli Defence Minister said will be a very significant response targeting Iranian regime infrastructure within Tehran in response to what was a ballistic missile that was fired from Iran this morning after that ceasefire took hold. But President Trump saying, look, the response from Israel is just not justified. This was one ballistic missile that, according to President Trump there, was either misfired or fired in error and was quickly taken out by the defence systems of Israel and does not warrant what will be, he says, a violation of this ceasefire. So absolutely no doubt about this. He said it there. He's going to board Air Force One now, and clearly he will be hammering home that message to Benjamin Netanyahu to get that message through to those pilots to turn around. It would be very interesting to see whether Israel is willing to completely defy what Donald Trump is trying to direct them to do.
Yeah,
he couldn't be clearer.
Donald Trump desperately trying to keep a lid on this.
Yes, there's no doubt, because I think he was understandably very pleased with the fact that he could bring the sides together to agree a ceasefire. And he put out, of course, on Truth Social, his congratulations to everyone concerned, and that, you know, this was, as far as he was concerned, a major triumph. So, but it was very fragile, clearly.
I guess it's easy for Donald Trump to say, well, it's not easy for Donald Trump to say, but he can say it, but it's Israel who's been targeted by Iran directly. So presumably they'll have a different take on this entirely.
Yes, indeed. I mean, listen, these issues around the Middle East are never, ever straightforward. And we know that Donald Trump ran for the presidency on both occasions, saying that he was never for a forever war. He didn't want to get caught up in the mess that are these wars in the Middle East or elsewhere. We see it, of course, now in Ukraine as well. He's been very reluctant to go down that particular path, and that's why I think there are many people within his own base very alarmed at the decision by Donald Trump to enter this war in the first place by bombing these nuclear installations. I mean, he has been very quick to say that that was a one-off endeavour to ensure that those nuclear facilities were dismantled, were destroyed, that that capability was no longer there for Iran to build a nuclear bomb. Mission accomplished as far as he was concerned. But of course, then he wanted to see Israel get on board with that, because the very reason that Israel said it had gone into Iran in the first place was to stop it getting a nuclear bomb. Now, it looks as though in the last couple of days, the mission for Israel has changed a bit. They've been going over going after regime targets. So the kind of apparatus that is responsible for state security, for the forces that are often employed to suppress the local population when they rise up against the Iranian regime. So a real sort of indication, perhaps, that Israel was minded to try to do all that it could to destabilise the Iranian regime. That's not what Donald Trump was looking for. And that's why he's clearly been able, or certainly as of early this morning, been able to persuade the two sides that enough is enough for now, that a ceasefire should be agreed to and they should step back from the brink. But we've had it violated so very quickly after that ceasefire came in.
And there is so much riding on this. This morning we saw oil prices actually fall to lower than they were before this crisis. Donald Trump had been posting on Truth Social saying, drill, baby, drill, everyone keep these oil prices down. It seemed like he was on for not just a sort of military diplomatic success, but an economic success too. And this is all now in severe jeopardy. As we speak, these planes flying over Syria, perhaps halfway between Israel and Iran, and yet no indication that the Israelis are turning these planes back, no indication that actually we've had any sort of public statement from Benjamin Netanyahu since we heard those words from Donald Trump. This is a moment of severe jeopardy.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if the word gets through. We simply don't know whether the planes will be turned back or not. They might well be. Benjamin Netanyahu might decide, given you couldn't get a more explicit and direct instruction, demand from the President of the United States, Israel's biggest ally and backer, to now back off and turn those planes around. If Benjamin Netanyahu decides to go ahead in his own national interest and on the belief of his war cabinet that this is the step they've got to take, then you've got to realise that, you know, in doing that, you are going to suffer really the ire of your biggest supporter and sponsor.
And Mark, do we have an idea on who's right in terms of Iran's violation of the ceasefire? Donald Trump saying it was a mistake or an error. Perhaps only one missile doesn't warrant this type of response. The IDF saying it's a severe violation of the ceasefire and therefore they must respond with force. Is the truth somewhere in the middle?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, just for a second, I've been distracted by the Prime Minister, who has given a response in relation to the apparent violation of the ceasefire. And he has said, well, I want the ceasefire to continue, and therefore, obviously, the sooner we get back to that, the better. And that's the message that I'm discussing with other leaders today. We need to get back to that ceasefire, which is consistent with what I've been saying about de-escalation for quite some time. I should just say that I exchanged messages with the Emir of Qatar yesterday as well, in relation to the attack yesterday. But whatever Sir Keir Starmer says, and whether he's speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, they're far, far less likely to listen to anything the UK government has to say and what Sir Keir Starmer has to say, particularly in light of a cooling off of relationships between the UK and the Israelis in recent weeks, than they will be for this man on board Air Force One now, as this aircraft turns around, taxis with a view to taking off, heading for the Netherlands for that important NATO meeting. But also, without a doubt, we will have a news conference and words from Donald Trump, which he will be even more fulsome than he has been there. And we'll know, of course, by the time that Donald Trump lands, whether Israel, whether Benjamin Netanyahu has listened to that warning, to that demand from the US president to turn those planes around and not drop those bombs.
What a significant moment for this all to be happening, of course, as Trump is heading to that NATO meeting. We can just see, for those listening on the radio, Air Force One beginning its taxi, as Mark was saying, to take off there just outside Washington, D.C. for that flight over the Atlantic. And to be honest, what could happen over that 7-hour flight, 8-hour flight, is really up in the air as that plane will be. It could be an entirely different situation in the Middle East by the time the President of the United States lands at that NATO headquarters, compared to what we are now experiencing while he is there for these few final seconds on the ground there in the United States of America.
Do you want an indication of just how clearly exasperated Donald Trump is? transcription of something that he said. I missed it, actually, on what has been played back here. But he said, speaking about Iran and Israel, they've been fighting for so long and so hard that they don't know what the F they're doing. You understand that? So an expletive. He's so exasperated, clearly, at what's going on, so angry that the ceasefire that he's brokered has been broken so very quickly. Of course, it's embarrassing for him as well, given how fulsome he was in his own, praising his own efforts on his social media accounts.
And he wants
just
to be
hours earlier.
That's what he wants his legacy, or at least part of his legacy to be, is peacemaker.
Yeah.
Whether it's between Ukraine, Russia, whether it's between Israel, Palestine, and now Iran. That's what he wants. And this is yet another obstacle. And will he be able to control the Israeli Defence Forces? That's the big question right now.
Well, Donald Trump is a shoot from the hip kind of a guy in terms of the rhetoric that you get from him. But, he's learning a lesson about affairs in the Middle East. These wars have been raging for thousands of years in the Middle East. And diplomacy, is exasperating as well, because it is often at such a glacial pace in the way in which inroads are made. He wants, and understandably, he wants things done and done quickly, and he wants an end to the fighting now. But he is finding out that these, old enemies take an awful lot of convincing to actually just step back from the brink, as we see now Air Force One picking up speed, heading down this runway to head off to Europe for that vital NATO summit.
And we will try and get that replay of the president's extraordinary outburst ready for you. Of course, this is daytime television. We will bleep the expletive that he used.
I hope so.
But this is, to all intents and purposes, I think the first time the President of the United States has said a swear word like that in front of the world's media. Lots of reports that Trump has been perhaps quite coarse in private, but in public, in front of the assembled press, what a moment. And as you say, Mark, it speaks to the mind of the man right now. This is clearly a very angry United States president on board that plane as it takes off for the Netherlands.
Yeah, I wonder what they will be thinking in Tehran about this, because he was clear that it was Israel that he really singled out in terms of expressing great anger and disappointment. He said, of course, both sides, Iran, he was disappointed with, Israel he was disappointed with, but particularly, he said, Israel unloading so soon after this ceasefire and making that very explicit warning now. He said, with regard to that ballistic missile, I think what amounts to the fact it was his belief that it was either a misfire or some kind of a mistake, that ballistic missile came over from Iran in the first place, and said, again in terms, it has been quickly dealt with. It posed no threat. It was taken out of the skies by Israel's defences. What is happening now seems completely unwarranted in terms of the level of the response that Israel is about to embark on.
But it may be that the Israelis, they're very much at the coalface, aren't they, of the Iranian threat, in a way that the rest of the West isn't. They've got Hezbollah, they've got Hamas, all sponsored and paid for by the Iranian regime. You can see why they may, in Trump's words, overreact.
Yes, indeed. We should say on the sort of reports that both Israel and Iran violated the ceasefire. Again, this is just kind of taking some of the quotes from his impromptu chat to the press there as he's about to board Marine One for then Air Force One. He said, I'm not sure they did it intentionally, Iran and Israel. They couldn't rein people back. He said, I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning, and I'm going to see if I can stop it. As soon as I get away from you, I'm going to see if I can stop it. So clearly once he's on Air Force One, and now it's taken off once he's in the position to do, once they have climbed and they've reached a point where they've levelled off, he'll be straight on the phone, it seems, to Israel.
Well, shall we at this point bring in the retired British Army officer, Sir Simon Mayle. Sir Simon, thank you for being on the line for us as this situation has continued to develop over the course of this afternoon. I mean, firstly, your reaction to that extraordinary outburst from the President of the United States amidst this moment of jeopardy in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, I don't think any of us are terribly surprised about how Donald Trump expresses himself quite often. There's clearly a huge frustration about the fact that he had negotiated a ceasefire on the back of the American actions against Fordo and Natanz. And equally, there's great frustration the Israelis have decided to throw his support back in his face. There's quite clearly a huge load of frustration with the way the attack on Iran has been reported by the mainstream media in the US as well. I think that came through very clearly, that Donald Trump felt he had achieved something quite significant, and quite clearly his enemies in the mainstream media, which we know well, have decided to question a lot of the motivation or the results, etc. So one felt, given the character of the man, the situation, the current situation on the back of his announcements, that there was quite a lot boiling up there, and he was dying to get on the phone and vent off to somebody.
Sir Simon, I mean, the IDF say that last night their Navy intercepted over 15 UAVs, which are unmanned drones, aren't they, launched by Iran. They say that this is a severe violation of the ceasefire, and that therefore they are justified in responding with force.
Yes, and I think it was you who said, one does have to understand the mindset of Israel that has been attacked over many, many years by Iran itself, but largely through Iran's proxies. There is a feeling of revenge that Israel can actively attack Iran itself. We had a couple of exchanges during, obviously, the Gaza, the ongoing situation in Gaza. I would be interested to know what Israel thinks they can hit that would be so important, and there might be something that they'd want to put President Trump's back up, because, as you quite rightly said, the Americans have been so staunch in covering Israel's back, and to throw something back in Donald Trump's face, unless you really have some targets that you really think this could be our last chance. Better to ask forgiveness than permission, that old cry. And it might be a last spasm before they say, OK, got it. They've done this before. Equally, they are always, as we know, absolutely ruthless when it comes to responding to attacks on their homeland. So we shouldn't be surprised, but wise heads do need to weigh in the balance, upsetting the president, upsetting those who are supporting Israel, while also justifiably defending themselves. So one is hoping that whatever's happening, they are really thinking this thing through at the moment, because we do need Israel and America and, dare I say, NATO allies, who Trump is going to talk to be absolutely on the same page when it comes to Iran. We can't have splits in the Western alliance.
Sir Simon, Mark White here. Can I ask you, obviously with your great military experience here, we heard explicitly from the President there expressing, of course, his exasperation, but desperately pleading with the Israelis to turn those warplanes around, don't drop those bombs. In your experience, once that command has been given and they're en route to carry out that mission, they're not going to turn it around, are they, even if this is the President of the United States?
Oh, they could do, Mark. I mean, I think quite a lot of this is, I won't say, I don't want to trivialise it, political performative violence. Some of the Iranian response to the American strike, you thought, yes, you've got to do something. Those planes could be turned around, and of course Benjamin Netanyahu may be launching them in order to do the president a favour, or say, I could go off the reservation. So it's quite interesting to look at the national psychologies and the psychologies of the individuals. But right up to the last moment, they could abort those missions. And so that will be the interesting thing about that conversation. There's quite a lengthy flight time from Israel across Syria and Iraq before they close on Tehran. But America's very keen to say, we dealt with a discrete problem. It was the Iranian nuclear file. We now want Iran without a bomb, but Iran in a complicit situation. And of course, we don't know quite how maximalist the Israeli, or certainly Benjamin Netanyahu's objectives are in Iran.
Now, I should say that we're just getting word that Trump is currently holding a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu live, sort of 30,000 feet in the air aboard Air Force One. What is being said in that phone call, of course, we can only guess at. But given the temperament of Donald Trump as he was there just before boarding Marine One, no doubt he will be perhaps expressing just as fruity language with the Israeli Prime Minister, but also repeating that call to not drop those bombs. Of course, it is within the gift of Israel to turn those planes around. So, Simon, do you expect that Netanyahu will listen or that he will carry on?
I think it really depends. Just what is of such significance that you would throw whatever in the face of your major ally. You can guarantee the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and every senior American official and military man will have been on to their Israeli counterparts as well. And so what the explanation is, or whether, as I say, I'm going to seek forgiveness rather than permission. So sorry, President Trump. At last, got it. That won't happen again, because they're going after something really specific, or someone really specific. But I couldn't imagine that they would do it again. But they may know Netanyahu, and we've all watched him and studied him for so many years. He has a skin like a rhino, and he may feel he could face down even the President of the United States. Equally, I don't think there can be many targets that would be worth alienating a man like President Trump, particularly given his style of leadership. Let alone all the goodwill of the American establishment towards Israel. And I think many Israelis would be slightly horrified if they felt he was compromising that very close relationship.
But with the conflict in Gaza, Israel becoming used to acting alone?
Very much. I mean, be under no illusions, and I'm sure you aren't. The political landscape in the Middle East has changed dramatically since the 7th of October. And there are people really worried that Israel is now the military hegemon. It obviously needs to restock, buy its equipment, restock its weapons supplies, etc. But the removal of Iran as a significant power there, obviously the Saudis will be watching that. The Egyptians will be watching. Erdogan in Turkey will be watching. The militias in Iraq will be watching. It really is a really significant shift in balance. And what, of course, we don't want is just to go into an extended period of volatility and violence. As you quite rightly said in your earlier reports, given the track record of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, let alone what's going on in Gaza at the moment. So trying to manage this, having dealt with a discrete problem set, the Iranian nuclear file, and then managing the fallout, and there are always going to be consequences, will be really difficult. And don't underestimate the mindset of the Iranian high command. This is existential to them, having led the Islamic Revolution and having this view about the future millenarian approach to Shiism and the coming of the occluded Mahdi, etc. Do not underestimate how sincerely felt that is by a number of people.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because there have been some reports in Iran. There have been some reports that the sort of religious mullahs are taking a back seat, and the IRGC is more powerful than ever within the sort of structures of decision-making in Iran. Is it becoming a more militarised place, and does that affect what sort of decisions might be made when it comes to firing their ballistic missiles or otherwise? Yes,
their options are limited. I mean, we have seen that we would have thought the best they can do, and it's been fairly pitiful in many ways, But there's no doubt about it, there are people who were very angry with Khamenei and perhaps some of the senior leadership of the IRGC that they weren't more aggressive towards Israel at the time when Hezbollah were being attacked, Hamas were being degraded. And so I think you will get a younger, more hardline set of IRGC leaders. Hence, it's interesting to know what target set the Israelis think is probably worth annoying the Americans with at this stage. And it might be, again, trying to degrade the IRGC. But the difference, of course, between Syria and Iraq is they were minority governments, as it were. It was Sunni minority in Iraq, Shia minority in Syria. Of course, here you've got an alignment with the majority Shia Iranians between the supreme leader, the IRGC, the Basij, etc. So there's a huge internal dynamic in Iraq, which we haven't seen in Iran, which we haven't yet seen play out, because we know there's deep dissatisfaction in many quarters for different reasons about why Iran is now in the situation it's in, and it's extremely weak at the moment. But that doesn't make it less dangerous in some ways.
So Simon, Mark White again. We're just hearing, I wonder if I can run this by you. An Israeli official has said that they are still likely to go ahead with the strike, regardless of the demand from President Trump. However, they consider it a symbolic response, and only one target will be struck. So that might mean, Sir Simon, I think, that they are listening to Trump, but they don't want to be impotent enough to sort of pull back from it. Do you think if one target, I know I'm trying to put you in the mind of Donald Trump as some place to be, but do you think if one target is struck, that might be a sort of get out for Donald Trump to say, look, they listened to me, they reined back what they were about to do here?
Yes, I do, to be honest with you, Mark. I think the stakes are so high. As I say, I think the attack on Al Udeid was fairly performative. I think the Iranians felt they had to do something. I don't know who launched that missile. It obviously, again, wasn't significant. And the Israelis feel they can't just let it pass. So I think there'll be a relatively grown-up conversation. And as I say, I find it very difficult to believe unless there was some absolutely literally strategically vital target that the Israelis felt they were going to hit short of a ceasefire, that they'd want to really upset the President of the United States.
Can I just interrupt again, as we've got a breaking line, Sir Simon. This, according to Reuters, coming from President Trump, saying Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home. So conflicting slightly with what we were hearing from that Israeli source. So let's see if that's borne out. But again, do you think that in doing that, Benjamin Netanyahu might feel that actually he feels a bit impotent if he's taking his orders directly from the President of the United States, having ordered his Air Force in?
I very much doubt that, Mark. I think the vast bulk, I suspect, of the Israeli High Command, IDF, and Israelis will be delighted. As you know, there's severe disquiet about the motivations of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think what they're proving again to the Iranians, and again, it's performative, I believe, unless there's some target they, as I say, have identified they particularly think they could strike now, is to demonstrate to the Iranians, trust me, it's only because we've been reined in by our closest ally that we weren't coming at you for that. You better not do that again, but we're going to back off this time. Again, like you, Mark, I'm not in the mind of Trump, Netanyahu, or the Supreme Leader, but I slightly can see, having worked in the Middle East, that some of these things have to be done for various audiences, and some play acting, and again, I don't want to trivialize what's going on at all, has to be gone through for certain internal audiences and external audiences. But if Donald Trump can say, right, they were listening to me, quite right to, let's get back on. The Iranians know that they are hugely vulnerable. Frankly, they can't do anything about Israeli strikes. and we do not have a higher body count at the moment, and we can get a ceasefire again. Honour maybe, we feel, be satisfied on all sides at this stage. It'll still be very fragile because of the divisions, I think, within Iran, which are really, really major.
Well, Sir Simon Mail, thanks so much for your expertise, for responding to what is a live and developing matter live on national television. Really do appreciate your time. Retired British Army officer, of course.
Thank you very much.
I think I should use this moment just to read out that full statement from Donald Trump. He says, Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
Well, I think we should pick this up after the break, don't you? Let's get to the headlines.
Thank you. The headlines at 12:30. Donald Trump says both Israel and Iran have violated the ceasefire in the Middle East just hours after it came into effect. Speaking to reporters, Mr. Trump said he didn't like that Israel unloaded right after they agreed to that ceasefire.
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong.
The government published its national security strategy, which said the UK needed to be more competitive and robust in science, education, trade and technology. New figures show that grocery prices are now 4.7% more expensive than a year ago as supermarket inflation hit its highest level since March last year. And Amazon says it'll invest £40 billion in the UK over the next 3 years as it creates thousands of jobs and opens 4 new warehouses. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You have a very nice accent, and I always thought but obviously I'm totally wrong. I've learned something already straight away.
I mean, we've interviewed together on countless occasions. I thought you would have picked up on my English accent.
Oh no, you're just changing it now. You're changing it a bit here.
Yeah, I'm just putting it on for you, mate.
Well, I'll tell you this, Chesney. I think it's amazing that we're talking about a tour next March for a man like you, and that shows you the extent to which you have to be organised to do these things. I thought, like, you're advertising this for this month or next month. Why the need to go so early?
Oh no, it's just to give people plenty of advance notice. You know, these days life comes up very fast, doesn't it? So I'm always touring, Eamon. I've actually got some headline shows coming up next week. I'm in Cardiff and Southampton, but we've just announced this headline tour for next year. So I thought I'd get it out there and let people know in advance. You know.
Good.
And Chesney, just looking at your Instagram now, I mean, you've got a sense of humour, haven't you? Because you've been putting videos out there saying people think I'm a one-hit wonder, but let me tell you, there'll be a lot more songs than just the one that you're most famous for.
Yes. Contrary to popular belief, there are other songs. So looking forward, I've got a new album out right now, Ellie, and it's all been very, very well received. I'm so honoured and grateful for that. And so, yeah, I'll be performing some of this new album out on the road soon. You guys should come.
GB News, the People's Channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday Five.
You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very, very easy tonight on the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 20 minutes to 1 o'clock, and a number of planes are in the air right now. Donald Trump is aboard Air Force One, heading for The Hague in the Netherlands for a NATO meeting. But crucially, Israeli bomber planes are turning around. At least that's according to the President of the United States. They had been heading towards Iran, currently over Syria. According to the President of the United States, those planes are now turning back.
Yes, in a post on Truth Social just a few minutes ago, he wrote, Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to the matter. And he signs off as the President of the United States. Now, we were hearing that they had a phone call between Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel and Donald Trump on board his jet. So. Let's go to Mark White, who can bring us the very latest, our Home and Security Editor.
This might not end well. We're hearing that Benjamin Netanyahu told Donald Trump that he could not cancel the attack and that some response was needed to Iran's violation of the ceasefire. That's according to an Axios reporter. And that would kind of chime with the breaking line that I brought about 50 minutes ago or so that was quoting an Israeli official saying that it would be a reduced strike, perhaps a symbolic target, one target. However, I've just seen now again from, and we're endeavouring to get this image cut, it's saying that Israel has struck an Iranian target right now, and there's a still image of some smoke rising. I don't know what that target is that I'm looking at because it kind of looks a bit like an open field, but there may be something behind that smoke. As I say, we're endeavouring to get that image to you as soon as possible.
So what could have happened here is that the initial bombing raid on perhaps very significant targets has been scaled back, but a more symbolic bombing raid has indeed taken place. How this sits with Donald Trump is anyone's guess, but more crucially, we have seen in this war consistently, when one side bombs the other, no matter how trivially that bomb lands or how much of it actually strikes the intended target and how much is intercepted or whatever, the other side then responds. And the question here becomes, is it going to be down to Iran to hold the restraint, to then not respond to this, albeit limited strike from Israel, if indeed one of these or several of these Israeli bombers have indeed struck a target in Iran? Is this going to lead to more tit-for-tat and instead of de-escalation, perhaps re-escalation?
Well, that's certainly a good question, and I don't really know. I'm getting a bit more word through on the potential target. Again, this just from intelligence sources suggesting that it may have been a military radar site that was struck, a military radar site that may have been struck in Iran. Again, I'm seeing some smoke rising, this time from video, which I'll send to our producers to get cut up as soon as possible. In the meantime, let's listen to what Donald Trump said prior to his departure, including, I think, that rather fruity language that we will have managed to bleep out for you.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, OK, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Well, I mean,
that is one very, very angry man who is clearly deeply, deeply frustrated that a ceasefire that he has managed to broker, which is not easy at the best of times in the Middle East, has not held for more than a couple of hours. He was angry at the fact that actually just as the ceasefire was supposed to be coming into effect anyway, just before that, Israel unloaded, according to Donald Trump, a very significant barrage of munitions onto targets within Iran anyway. And at the same time, Iran unloaded 14 ballistic missiles at Israel. Then the ceasefire came in and we had peace for a couple of hours until that ballistic missile, the other one, was launched from Iran towards Israel. Now, Donald Trump as well, in that impromptu chat to the press as he got onto the Marine One helicopter, did seem to suggest that the ballistic missile that was launched from Iran might have been a misfire, a mistake, and that regardless, it was quickly dealt with by the military and defence missile systems of Israel, and therefore a very significant response from Israel was just not justified.
We should say we're looking at live pictures in Israel, Tel Aviv on the left, Haifa on the right. We have not yet seen what Iran will be doing. We don't know yet if these sites will be struck, but of course these have been targets of the Iranian regime in the past days. There have, of course, been deaths of Israeli civilians. There has been an Israeli hospital that has been struck, Israeli apartment blocks that have been struck by these Iranian ballistic missiles. And yet, what Donald Trump seemed so giddy about this morning was the fact that these two sides had agreed to a ceasefire, calling this a war that lasted mere days, that this was all over, that what a remarkable and miraculous thing had been achieved. And yet, before our very eyes, this is disintegrating.
Yes, and importantly, just to our friends in the gallery, when we have these images, just let us know of the target in Iran that we think has been struck, that may be a military radar installation. There's a still image of smoke, and then there's a very short video clip as well. So we'll endeavour to bring that to you as soon as possible. With regard to the live images at the moment, there isn't a missile launch from Iran. We normally get a bit of warning from the Israeli state about 12-15 minutes or so before the strikes that they've detected a launch from Iran. And anyway, Iran, I don't think would be launching until Israel is struck. Well, they've obviously struck now, but it might take them a while to get their missile launchers in place if that's what they want to do. But listen, Donald Trump, in that email or that Truth Social post that he's put out, seems very certain that the ceasefire is still holding, that there will be no strikes now from Israel, even though these intelligence sources say that's exactly what has happened.
And he's posted again in the last 13 minutes, just with Iran will never rebuild their nuclear facilities. That's his latest post, just 5 minutes after he posted about Israel not attacking Iran. We know that there was a phone call, or at least there are reports there was a phone call. We don't know how long it lasted between Benjamin Netanyahu and the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the phone call would have had to have taken place pretty much immediately after those intemperate comments to the press on the tarmac. Beside Air Force One before he took off. The hope is, therefore, for the United States that Israel will turn those planes around, but we do not know whether that has happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the intemperate comments were to the to the press. It would be rather elevated, I think. You're looking at images there. This is the strike we were talking about. This is, I think, the still image to begin with. That looks as though it's in kind of open ground. So it's just that image just now. When we got the video, we'll bring that to you as well. It looks like it's an open ground. The video that I've seen actually looks like it's behind a building, and we'll have that for you any second as well. And as say, intelligence sources suggesting it may have been a military radar installation in Iran, regardless of whether it was a site of significance or not. It's still an Israeli attack on Iranian soil. Will the Iranians feel obliged to respond in kind once again, or will they be more willing to sort of abide by the spirit of that ceasefire that Donald Trump brokered? The hope has to be that by the time Donald Trump and Air Force One land in the Netherlands for that NATO summit, that he will have something more concrete to say, and perhaps something more positive to say about the direction of travel with regard to the ceasefire. As we continue to look at these live shots over Israel, the capital, Tel Aviv, and Haifa in the north, that port city, always on the lookout for any potential signs of an Iranian retaliation, but nothing that's being reported from the Israelis at this point in terms of them detecting any launches from Iranian soil towards the Israeli airspace.
Now, I'm just seeing that there have been some reports. We saw that picture just north of Tehran, a place called Babelsar is reportedly what has been struck. An unverified report suggests there have been multiple explosions there rather than just the one. But I suppose this is a big question. Is this a more limited strike from the Israelis, or was this what they were originally planning to do? I mean, judging by what we have heard reportedly came out of that phone call between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, this could be a much more minor strike than what Israel was originally preparing.
We can bring you the video now, Tom. You can see it's behind that building, more smoke rising there. It's just a very short video. But yes, I think you're right in terms of this being a scaled-back response from Israel. I think to an extent, as much as he was willing to, Benjamin Netanyahu has listened to Donald Trump, and that might give Donald Trump, even though he said very clearly on Truth Social that no bombs will be dropped. Clearly, they have been missiles or bombs or whatever was used to target this particular area. And as I say, reports that it was a military radar. I think it is scaled back because we got very definite indications from the Israel Defense Minister, Israel Katz, who said that he had instructed the IDF to carry out a very significant attack on regime targets in Tehran, in the Iranian capital. That we don't believe has happened. So this is a response, it seems, to the demand by Donald Trump, but not going all the way as to not at least dropping something on some target.
Now, this is, of course, all in the context of a NATO meeting that is due to take place not just today, but over the next couple of days in The Hague in the Netherlands. Donald Trump currently in the air on his way there, where he will meet the leaders of NATO nations as well as President Zelensky of Ukraine. I mean, will there be a wider response to what is going on here, or are countries like Britain fairly out of the loop on this?
Well, they've found themselves in an increasingly difficult situation, although they are now saying that their calls for de-escalation are more relevant now than they have been because Donald Trump is in the loop there. Listen, one final piece before we go to the break of breaking news on this. Significant. This has come from Israeli Army radio confirming that the military attacked an Iranian radar near Tehran. So that's confirmed by the Israeli army radio, saying that the Israeli military attacked an Iranian radar near Tehran. So not quite as the US president had claimed on his Truth Social post that no bombs would be dropped. They clearly have been. How angry will President Trump be? Or will he be able to turn this around and say that he's still been able to ensure that Benjamin Netanyahu launches a very, very limited strike?
Huge questions with this developing situation. We'll be bringing you the very latest live in this developing situation after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mixed bag today, fairly cloudy, some rain in places and still quite breezy, but parts of the southeast in particular seeing some warm sunshine. Here's the bigger picture. Low pressure sitting to the north. This tangle of weather fronts has been edging its way in across the country. This cold front will bring some rain to southern Scotland and Northern Ireland around the middle of the day, but as that clears away, it should turn drier here later on. Staying fairly dull and damp over the Pennines. A little bit of rain at times getting into parts of Yorkshire too. Much of the south looking dry, and parts of East Wales, the Midlands, towards East Anglia seeing some warm but humid sunshine. Temperatures in this zone getting up to 25, 26 degrees as possible. Through the evening time, we'll continue to see a little bit of that rain tracking south into northern England. Always showers coming into western parts of Scotland. Probably not too many getting into the east coast. Staying largely fine here and turning a bit drier and brighter through the afternoon and evening through the central belt and across Northern Ireland. Staying mostly cloudy, but the rain should start to ease. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going over northern England, parts of West Wales, but much of Wales, central and southern England having a fine evening. Still quite breezy, however. That breeze will continue to ease down overnight, and the rain will continue to trickle its way southwards. Parts of Wales having a damp night, some patchy rain still over northern England, maybe heading into the Midlands, and some scattered showers in western Scotland. But many eastern areas having a dry night for sure. Temperatures holding up in double figures, holding up in the mid-teens across a good part of England and Wales. So quite a warm, humid feel here again tomorrow. Rain and drizzle at times in South Wales, maybe affecting parts of the West Midlands. But for many, I suspect it'll be a dry day tomorrow and a better chance of seeing some sunny spells, especially for North Wales. Northern England looking a lot brighter too. The odd shower in western Scotland. And it's really quite warm and humid, and the chance of some thunderstorms coming up to the south later tomorrow.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Front page of the Times today says exercise proves the best therapy for keeping cancer at bay. Let's get the views of Tim Vincent.
It's quite an exciting trial, this. There's new findings every single day, isn't there? But I think this has been done over many years by a lot of people. And it actually says, what you'd assume would be the case is that if you exercise, then it keeps your health in a better condition and will keep cancer from returning. measurably, notably,
Yeah.
up to, I think it's 30-something%. And this is on people that have had cancer and then are encouraged to exercise. And there's many doctors over the years have said, you know, not quite sure. If you feel like you can exercise, then exercise. They're now saying you should exercise as soon as you feel good enough.
This just
and
makes
this
me,
will make a big difference.
This makes me feel awful because I would have been pro-exercise, except I can't move. I'm in a wheelchair now, and I can't put on the right trainers, I can't change, I can't go to the showers, I can't do things. It's just I can't stand up. So there are a lot of people who are incapable of exercising, and therefore, rightly so, we see their increase of cancer growing.
Absolutely, and that's an issue that everybody's going to face, and you're obviously in a really difficult position. Any exercise, I think, is going to help, especially for these people that have had cancer once and can get out there. And it's very isolating as well, exercise.
So you're actually saying, if you're in redemption from cancer or whatever, you could keep it at bay by exercising.
It's actually better than a pill.
Yeah.
The results are actually better than a pill.
I think it's 36%, isn't it, for exercise?
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 24th of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, Israel orders strikes to the heart of Tehran as the ceasefire appears to break down only hours after it was announced. A furious Donald Trump condemns both sides as he issues an ominous warning to Benjamin Netanyahu. Do not drop these bombs. We've got updates.
Well, it appears those bombs have been dropped. Israeli army radio confirming that a radar site in Iran has been attacked.
The PM on the way to NATO summit urges both sides to carry on with the ceasefire. Diplomacy must prevail, but will it?
And amidst it all, the Prime Minister will commit Britain to a new NATO target of spending 5% of GDP on security by 2035. That means an extra £40 billion to defence each year. We'll hear how he plans to pay for it.
Or not. And asylum seekers have been told by police to treat women with respect and not to harass them. This is part of a presentation on UK culture. Is our broken asylum system leaving women and girls at risk?
Elsewhere, the Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch says Britain should look at replicating a controversial Danish ghetto law, allowing officials to tear down social housing in immigrant-dominated neighbourhoods in order to promote assimilation.
OK, well, this is a fast-moving day of news with regards to Iran and Israel. Hearing from Donald Trump will bring you the very latest throughout the show.
It has been an extraordinary hour. First, we had the President of the United States being more furious than I think we have seen him in a very long time on camera.
Absolutely.
Using the F word in front of the world's press, before getting on board Marine One and then Air Force One, and when on board that plane, having a phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, out of which contradictory statements came. But let's listen to what Donald Trump said to the world's media moments ago.
Basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
There you go. And what on earth is Britain's role in all of this? We've heard from David Lammy, we've heard from Keir Starmer, all calling for de-escalation on both sides of this conflict. Does it mean anything? Does it count for anything? We know the Prime Minister is heading to NATO, so we shall see. But do get your thoughts in, gbnews.com/your say. We're going to be bringing you expertise and analysis throughout the show and, of course, all the breaking news. But let's get to the headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you. The top stories. Donald Trump says Israel is not going to attack Iran and that all planes will turn around and head home, adding that nobody will be hurt and the ceasefire is in effect. However, in the last few minutes, we can confirm that the Israeli army radio says its military has attacked an Iranian radar site near Tehran. The US president had reportedly asked Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack Iran, to which the Israeli prime minister had reportedly said he could not cancel that attack and that some response was needed to Iran's violation of the ceasefire. Speaking to reporters, Mr. Trump said he didn't like that Israel unloaded right after they agreed to a ceasefire, blaming both Israel and Iran. Mr. Trump has also warned Israel do not drop those bombs and says if they do, it's a major violation.
One rocket that I guess was fired overboard, it was after the time limit and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
Meanwhile, a second evacuation flight has been arranged for Britons in Israel. Foreign Office Minister Hamish Falconer has said. Israel's defence minister said earlier today that Israel would respond forcefully to today's ceasefire violation. Iran denied the missile had come from them. Leaders from NATO are gathering in the Netherlands with the Prime Minister and President Trump both attending at the summit. Sir Keir Starmer is due to announce an increase in defence spending to 5% of GDP, but not until 2035, but without promising any additional cash. 32 member countries, including the UK, are expected to agree to the 5% goal, with 3.5% to go on core defence and the remaining 1.5% on defence-related areas such as resilience and security. The government's intention to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035 has been branded as hollow and unfunded by Reform UK. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has said every element of society must be mobilised towards a collective national effort to keep the UK safe. In a forward to the national security strategy, he has said this afternoon that Russian aggression menaces our continent. The government said the UK needed to be more competitive and robust in science, education, trade and technology. The summit will be Mark Rutte's first as Secretary-General of NATO. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, the former Dutch Prime Minister said the 5% spending commitment was a quantum leap that's ambitious, historic and fundamental to securing our future. In other news, new figures show that grocery prices are now 4.7% more expensive than a year ago, as supermarket inflation hit its highest level since March last year. The figure is up from 4.1% last month, which was a rise from 3.8% in April, according to data from Kantar. Price rises didn't stop British consumers from making 490 million trips to the supermarket over the last month, averaging almost 17 per household, at the highest recorded by Kantar since March 2020. In other news, Amazon says it'll invest £40 billion in the UK over the next 3 years as it creates thousands of jobs and opens 4 new warehouses. The online shopping giant will build 2 huge fulfilment centres in the East Midlands, which it expects to open in 2027. 2 others in Hull and Northampton were previously announced and are set to be finished this year and next, respectively, with 2,000 jobs expected at each site. 2 new buildings will also go up at its corporate headquarters in East London. Amazon's already one of the country's biggest private employers, with around 75,000 staff. Women who have delayed coming forward for cervical screening will be offered a test to be taken at home, the NHS in England has said. The DIY test kits will be available from January. The test is for HPV, which causes most cervical cancers. Women between the ages of 25 and 64 are offered it every few years. The Department for Health and Social Care in England said the scheme would tackle deeply entrenched barriers that keep women away from cervical screening. Just 68% of women currently take up the offer of a screening. And Wimbledon plan to honour Sir Andy Murray with a statue at the All England Club. Murray, the Wimbledon men's singles champion in both 2013 and 2016, retired last year and will be involved in the designing of the sculpture. Wimbledon hopes the statue will be revealed in 2027 during the championship's 150th anniversary. And those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3607 and €1.1733 euros. The price of gold is £2,439.79 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,786 points.
Done.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 1. Now, as we've been reporting over the last hour plus, there has been an extraordinary breakdown of the tentative ceasefire in the Middle East. Well, Israel, Donald Trump pleaded with Israel not to bomb Iran, and yet clearly there has been some action. The extent of that action still remains in a little bit of mystery.
Yes, we're hearing that it may well have been quite dramatically scaled back, but the details remain to be seen. Let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, for some of the politics surrounding this. The Prime Minister will be talking a lot about defence. We've heard a little from David Lammy, a little from Keir Starmer. The big word of the day, de-escalation, at least from the British side.
Yes, hi Tom, hi Emily. Yeah, welcome back to Downing Street. We've been with the Prime Minister's spokesman for the past hour. Those extraordinary intemperate remarks from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, using the F word live on camera, that was not known to the PM's spokesman when that came up. Of course, he had no comment on it, having not seen the context of what he meant. But clearly, the US is frustrated with what's going on between Iran and Israel. The leader of the free world has declared a ceasefire. That's now being ignored by the two parties. That is what's concerning them. As it is for the UK PM side, I asked in the lobby briefing several times, did the UK support the US bombardment of Israel and so decisively against their nuclear programme? We couldn't get a yes from the spokesman. Instead, the PM has spoken with reporters on the way to the NATO summit where Donald Trump is heading, and he has said he wants the ceasefire to continue, and therefore the sooner we get back to that, the better. That's a message Sir Keir Starmer will be discussing with other world leaders at the NATO summit in The Hague. We need to get back to that ceasefire, he says, and he's been consistent with that and calling for de-escalation. So it's clear, I think, that the UK government is simply an observer to what's going on in the Middle East. We may not like that, we may feel we have a bigger role to play, but we don't, and that's quite an issue, I think, for the UK to contend with.
I mean, this is something that seems to be so delicately and finely balanced. This morning, we saw a jubilant Donald Trump saying that there had been this remarkable ceasefire agreed. Oil prices started to absolutely come down to the lowest they'd been in many, many weeks. It looked like we were heading for a moment of stability. Only then for the Israelis to declare that the Iranians had fired more missiles, that demanded a response, and it seemed like we were back to square one. But it's so hard now to suggest, will the Iranians fire back due to this Israeli action? Will this be it? I mean, judging by the history of this conflict, it has been tit for tat and tit for tat. What do you think is the most likely course of action to take place now?
Well, I think the most likely course of action is that both sides calm down. It looked overnight, didn't it, that Iran had done their bit to restore a degree of pride in the region. They'd launched those missiles to Al Udeid, the US air base. Well, I was there about 20 years ago, I think, with David Cameron. It's a significant place for the US. There's lots of US assets there. Nothing caused any damage. Then we all move on. That was what we thought was happening. And then suddenly, as the US president says there, what on earth is happening here? These two sides have been fighting for so long, they've forgotten how not to fight. So I think it's probably time to bang some heads together from the US side. We'll see what Donald Trump says when he lands. But before I go, I should also say there's big issues back here in the UK for the Prime Minister, because the big news out of the lobby briefing domestically is that the government is going to carry on with its welfare reforms. Despite 108 Labour MPs supporting an amendment against these changes, the vote is due on Tuesday, but we're told that the Cabinet supports them. They are behind them. These are changes which will change the way that PIP is calculated. Crucially, they'll cut $5 billion off the welfare bill, which the government needs to do in order to balance the books. If not that, it may have to raise taxes. It's very important, and the government said, the PM has been very clear to the Cabinet briefing this morning that they want these changes will restore hope to people stuck on benefits, and they will go ahead with them. So right now, Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall is pushing forward. We're talking to these backbenchers, but with the scale of the rebellion, it's very, very hard to see how this ends any way well for this government.
Well, thank you very much for those updates, Christopher Hope, on both the foreign conflict and, of course, that domestic issue. Christopher Hope will catch up with you a little bit later. But in the meantime, shall we speak to the former Defence Secretary, Dame Penny Mordaunt? Dame Penny, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. The word of the day from our government appears to be de-escalation, but are we appearing quite irrelevant, frankly?
Well, look, the President of the United States is clearly very frustrated at this situation, and both he and partners in the region will be trying to calm things down. It has been disappointing to see that we haven't quite been in the loop as a nation on this. That's certainly, as a outsider looking in, that's the impression that you're getting. But the important thing is this does calm down, and the president has set out a plan for how Iran might be able to have a civil nuclear program that people can have assurances in going forward. And I would like to see that plan taken forward. So I'm hoping that he can make progress on that.
What do you make of the seeming, I don't want to overstate it, but partial breakdown in relations between the United States and Israel? These two countries used to be joined at the hip, and now it seems that Benjamin Netanyahu is willing to, well, defy the wishes of Donald Trump. Donald Trump furious there, making that phone call from aboard Air Force One on the way to the NATO meeting, saying, do not drop those bombs, turn those planes back. And Netanyahu did drop at least some of those bombs.
Yes, and we still haven't got verification about why they did that and what Iran might have sent the other way. But I think the important thing is that there's still dialogue going on. Clearly, the president is very frustrated, and I'm sure that will be pressed upon Israel. But Israel is not going to compromise on its defense. And if it is still being attacked, it will defend itself, and it's right to.
Now, the broader context, of course, is this NATO summit today. The Prime Minister is due to tell us all that he does want to reach 5% of GDP in terms of defence spending. He wants to spend that amount by 2035. That would be apparently an increase of £40 billion every single year. Are you supportive of that target?
Well, I would love that, but as you know, it's not funded. I mean, if Puff the Magic Dragon held a cigar party in the Palace of Versailles, you couldn't have any more smoke and mirrors than the Treasury has deployed today. Leave aside the 1.5, which is spent on things which aren't really defence but support our security, which could include road infrastructure, for example. What we're talking about is trying to meet the NATO new floor of 3.5% in the next parliament. That's what NATO says we need to do as a minimum. And unless you've got a plan to fund that, it doesn't matter what your ambitions are. And that's important, not just because you need that credibility. You also need to send a signal to industry. You're going to make that investment so it can gear up. And you need to also send a signal which will enable nations to be smarter about their procurement and make the efficiency savings that are already baked in to the MOD's budget. And I'm afraid at the spending review, there was no uplift to defence spending at all. We've still got big questions about how this disastrous Chagos Islands deal is going to be funded, and even which department the budget is going to come from. And there's all sorts of questions around the ambition on savings that the department will make. So it's a mess. This is what Labour always does. When we came in 2010, the black hole in the defence budget was twice the size of the defence budget, £71 billion on Rousseau's figures. It's because it talks the talk, but it does not put its money where its mouth is.
I wonder if one solution to this could be to follow in the footsteps of Chancellor Merz in Germany, who has announced that he will be massively increasing German defence spending, and it will be funded entirely through borrowing. I mean, we could see this government embark on an absolute splurge in borrowing of tens upon tens of billions of pounds more each year. And that's above the extra borrowing that was already announced in the budget last year. I suppose, on the one hand, you might get a more stable security infrastructure out of that, but on the other, a less stable economic infrastructure.
Well, I think there's three things I would say to that. Look, firstly, this isn't a choice. If you do not have strong defences, your NHS is open to cyber attack. If you can't keep your sea lanes open, you can kiss the growth agenda goodbye. So we have got to recognise the importance of this. And indeed, the Prime Minister himself has said this is important. He had the Defence Review a week prior to the spending review. I was very optimistic about what he was saying, and then the money wasn't there. But there are two further things as well. You have got to send a signal to industry that you are going to invest in these capabilities. If you do that, then defence becomes cheaper. Then you get the efficiency savings. Then people are able to make the investment. And if you also reform at the same time, you make your procurement better, faster, more joined up with other nations, then you get the private sector also investing, because the return to them is likely to be greater. So all the things you want to be doing to get this to go in the right way and find additional resources elsewhere, all those avenues are currently being blocked off because the Treasury has not factored this in to its budgeting. And so it doesn't matter what is said at NATO. It might give the Americans some hope that we really are stepping up. But the sad thing is we're not, and we need to. This is a real moment for our nation. And if we don't pay the bills now on defence, which are considerable, the price we are going to pay in the years to come in blood and treasure are going to be unbearable. This really is a wake-up moment for the nation.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of where do you cut? How do you raise those funds without borrowing? But Dame Penny Mordaunt, really appreciate your time as ever, former Defence Secretary. Fantastic to hear your thoughts on everything that's going on.
And what a lot is going on. Do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain, because there is so much more to cover. We, of course, have the President of the United States 30,000 feet in the air on his way to The Hague in the Netherlands for that NATO meeting. We have, albeit tentative, not yet full confirmation of Israeli bombs still dropping on Iran after that ceasefire was announced. What exactly is the picture in the Middle East? How will it affect us here at home? Do stay with us as we get to the bottom of it all after this short break.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1. Now, big goings-on in the Middle East. Big goings-on over the Atlantic, where the President of the United States is aboard Air Force One on his way to that NATO meeting. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is here with the very latest. Mark, do we know any more about what was actually hit by this apparent Israeli strike?
Yes, apparently it was a military radar installation on the outskirts of Tehran. And Emily was asking before, so we'll just explain what a military radar installation is.
Mark.
I'm seriously trying to...
I'm asking for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, you know.
And that's exactly what I'm doing. So for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, radar is effectively the system that allows the military, in this case, to be able to track incoming and outgoing objects like aircraft, missiles and the like. It is very important to a country's defence systems, layered defence systems, in trying to track potential incoming threats. So that's why Israel on this occasion has decided to attack this particular military radar installation. and we assume has taken it out. Now, this is important. You're looking at the images there of the smoke rising from that installation there. It doesn't show much there in terms of what the actual damage might be. There's a bit of video as well that's short that shows that behind a building as well. But again, doesn't really show us much about the success or otherwise of this operation. As we understand it, the President Trump, after that absolute, clearly incandescent tirade to the cameras before he got on Marine One, that Marine helicopter, before and then going to Air Force One to take off. He's now airborne for the Netherlands, was very angry at the way in which he believed both Iran and Israel had violated the ceasefire, lobbing munitions, very significant quantities of missiles and bombs at each other just in the hours and minutes before the ceasefire took effect. And then the fact, of course, that Iran launched a ballistic missile after the ceasefire had apparently taken effect. And given that, the fact that many Israeli airplanes, combat jets, were en route to Iran and actually making that direct demand of Benjamin Netanyahu to the cameras, saying that this should not happen, that these warplanes cannot drop their bombs, that they should turn around and come back now. Now, that was followed up, we're told, by a telephone call to Benjamin Netanyahu aboard Air Force One, in which he demanded exactly the same of the Israeli Prime Minister. The Israeli Prime Minister then had apparently told Donald Trump that he could not call off the attack in its entirety, that there had to be a response to the launch of that ballistic missile towards Israel earlier, but that they would scale it back. Now, will that be enough for Donald Trump, having put out, as we saw on Truth Social, on his social media account there, that there will be no bombs dropped, that the planes are turning back, and that peace reigns in Iran and in Israel at the moment? Will that be enough for him? Well, we'll wait and see.
Well, the dangerous thing is that the ball is now in the Ayatollah's court. And we know that Iran has been a relatively unstable regime in the past. We have seen reports in recent days about how the IRGC, the sort of military complex within Iran, seem to have been taking much more of a forefront position, and perhaps the more religious elements actually taking a step back. And there's concern that actually Iran, as a result of all of this action, and frankly, as a result of the assassination of so many senior figures as well, the new people coming up, perhaps more warmongering than before. And then we had this ceasefire. Surprised, I think, the world that this was actually agreed to. But clearly such a delicately balanced ceasefire. And as I say, the ball now in the court of the Iranians, a dangerous place for that metaphorical ball to be.
Yeah, I should say we've heard word from the Israeli Prime Minister's office saying that following President Trump's conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israel has refrained from further strikes. Well, that's further strikes. It doesn't appear to have refrained from the actual strike that was underway, although it had, we understand, scaled it back, because we were expecting to be a very significant strike on regime targets within Tehran. To that end, actually, another piece of breaking news: the deputy head of intelligence of Iran's police has been killed in an Israeli attack, according to the Fars news agency in Iran. Now, we assume that that was actually in the strikes that took place in the minutes before this ceasefire took hold earlier this morning. The strikes that, again, Donald Trump, clearly very angry and exasperated, said should not have happened, that there should not have been this level of attack, having, you know, the Israeli Prime Minister and indeed the Iranians having agreed to the ceasefire should not then have conducted very significant strikes, even if it was before the exact time of the ceasefire. What was interesting as well, I thought, from Donald Trump, a lot of his ire wasn't just directed at Iran and Israel. He's been irritated for some time at what he sees, of course, as the dishonest fake news in America. But I think he's been particularly angry at the analysis that is being done by channels such as CNN and NBC, sort of really, he would say, is somewhat degrading the level of the response and the attack on the nuclear complexes at Natanz and at Isfahan and at Fordow, suggesting that they might not have been as significant as President Trump claimed they were in obliterating these complexes. And President Trump saying he has no choice but to watch these networks as part of the... Well, he does have a choice, but clearly he does. He watches them religiously, and he's very irritated because he believes that he's caused very significant damage, and he's saying, how on earth would they know any different to what he would know from his own intelligence sources?
Well, Mark, there's a big question mark over what's going to happen next, what Trump will do, given that Israel has broken, at least partially, the ceasefire there. Mark, please stay with us a little longer. We're going to take a short break. We've got lots more else coming up on today's show. Yes, the government's authority in chaos. The Prime Minister, 108 MPs are set to defy the Prime Minister over his plans to reduce disability benefits in the welfare reform bill next week. He insists, though, that he's going to continue on.
And Britain is set to lose more millionaires than any other country this year. A net 16,500 millionaires are predicted to quit Britain this year alone. So what does this mean for the rest of us? Does that mean the incidence of tax will fall on those of us who aren't, sadly, millionaires? Well, that's after your latest news headlines.
Thank you. The headlines at 1:30. Donald Trump says Israel is not going to attack Iran and that all planes will turn around and head home, adding that the ceasefire is in effect. However, the Israeli army radio says its military has attacked an Iranian radar site near Tehran.
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong.
Volodymyr Zelensky says Vladimir Putin could attack a NATO country within 5 years to test the alliance. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is due to announce an increase in defence spending to 5% of GDP, but not until 2035. The government published its national security strategy, which said the UK needed to be more competitive and robust in science, education, trade and technology. New figures show that grocery prices are up now 4.7% more expensive than a year ago as supermarket inflation hit its highest level since March last year. And Amazon says it'll invest £40 billion in the UK over the next 3 years as it creates thousands of jobs and opens 4 new warehouses. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mixed bag today, fairly cloudy, some rain in places and still quite breezy, but parts of the southeast in particular seeing some warm sunshine. Here's the bigger picture. Low pressure sitting to the north. This tangle of weather fronts has been edging its way in across the country. This cold front will bring some rain to southern Scotland and Northern Ireland around the middle of the day, but as that clears away, it should turn drier here later on. Staying fairly dull and damp over the Pennines. A little bit of rain at times getting into parts of Yorkshire too. Much of the south looking dry, and parts of East Wales, the Midlands, towards East Anglia seeing some warm but humid sunshine. Temperatures in this zone getting up to 25, 26 degrees as possible. Through the evening time, we'll continue to see a little bit of that rain tracking south into northern England. Always showers coming into western parts of Scotland. Probably not too many getting into the east coast. Staying largely fine here and turning a bit drier and brighter through the afternoon and evening through the central belt and across across Northern Ireland, staying mostly cloudy, but the rain should start to ease. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going over northern England, parts of West Wales, but much of Wales, central and southern England having a fine evening. Still quite breezy, however. That breeze will continue to ease down overnight, and the rain will continue to trickle its way southwards. Parts of Wales having a damp night, some patchy rain still over northern England, maybe heading into the Midlands, and some scattered showers in western Scotland. But many eastern areas having a dry night for sure. Temperatures holding up in double figures, holding up in the mid-teens across a good part of England and Wales. So quite a warm, humid feel here again tomorrow. Rain and drizzle at times in South Wales, maybe affecting parts of the West Midlands. But for many, I suspect it'll be a dry day tomorrow and a better chance of seeing some sunny spells, especially for North Wales. Northern England looking a lot brighter too. The odd shower in western Scotland. And it's really quite warm and humid, and the chance of some thunderstorms coming up to the south later tomorrow.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 westbound junction 6A on slip is currently closed due to essential planned maintenance. Drivers should follow the signed diversion route. Meanwhile, on the M25 anti-clockwise, a road traffic collision between junction 6 and junction 5 in Surrey has resulted in one lane being closed. Please expect normal traffic conditions to resume between 4 and 4:15 this afternoon. And on the trains, Chiltern Railways is experiencing disruption between Birmingham Snow Hill and Dorridge, while London North Western Railway has a reduced service operating between Bletchley and Bedford. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. Britain is just coming up to 20-2. Now Britain is set to lose a record 16,500 millionaires this year as policy changes on tax and visas drive high net worth individuals overseas.
That's a lot of millionaires. A new report warns of a £66 billion capital outflow as the UK tops the global chart for wealth loss, even surpassing China and Russia. So there's more millionaires leaving this country this year than leaving China and Russia.
Well, we're joined now to discuss this by a member of the group calling themselves patriotic millionaires, those millionaires who want higher taxes, even higher taxes, I should say. Julia Davies, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Does it concern you that so many high net worth individuals are choosing to, well, up sticks and leave?
It doesn't concern me because those figures just don't stack up. So it's really important to look at the source of these figures. These figures are being issued by a firm called Henley & Partners, and they're a wealth migration service. So they are a firm who are providing services to wealthy people who move around the world, basically to avoid contributing to public funds in their own country as much as they can. So this is like a carpet salesman saying, everyone's going out and changing their carpets. We really cannot take this as sensible news. And these figures have been looked into by lots of reputable people who've said they can't be relied on. But you know what? Even if they can be relied on, when you actually look at them from a historic period of time, they don't add up to an increase. And actually, during the period of time which they're focusing on, so from 2017, these come up with a sort of an average movement of millionaires of 0.2%, very small number, during which period of time the number of millionaires have increased by 20%. So this is very selective figures that have been taken out, and they are being reported. And I would say they're being reported because more and more British people are listening to patriotic millionaires and listening to the message that actually we're not taxing wealth in this country anything like fairly. And
Julia, what evidence do you have? What evidence do you have to suggest that millionaires are listening to your message and wanting to pay more tax? Because millionaires are very mobile, Julia.
Millionaires are very mobile, yes, and so are other people. So actually, what's been more interesting, we look at the figures of the number of doctors that are leaving the UK. So we're losing really skilled workers because we're not investing in Britain. But do you know what? Patriotic millionaires are investing in Britain. And we've done surveys year after year, and they've shown that the vast majority...
How many patriotic millionaires are there?
I haven't got the exact figure at the moment, but
is it dozens? Is it a handful? Is it hundreds?
No, it's not a handful. It's increasing. We're getting towards 100, but that's just people who are members. But our surveys go much wider than that. And our surveys survey millionaires, and we've done it year on year, and they show the vast majority of people with wealth in this country understand that we need to invest more in this country. And that means we need to invest in public services, which is good for businesses, it's good for our workers, and it's good for everybody. It's no matter how much money you want to live in a well-functioning country where we're investing in public services, where we all feel that our kids are safe to go out at night, we're not worrying about them, we're not feeling that we want to keep ourselves locked away.
Julia, does it not give you pause for thought that as a percentage of our economy, tax as a percentage of GDP is the highest that it has been on record? We've got records going back to the Second World War, and never before in the history of this country has tax been a higher percentage of our economy. But strangely, we also have rarely taxed people on low incomes less. I mean, the level at which income tax kicks in has been falling. And granted, it rose a little bit after COVID, but it had been falling after that threshold was raised consecutively by the coalition government and then the following Conservative government. And in fact, the incidence of tax falls mainly on those who earn six-figure salaries, on millionaires. And they've never been taxed more.
What we need to look at is where wealth actually is in this country. So what we've seen is a considerable concentration of the wealth into fewer and fewer hands. So if you have wealth concentrated into fewer and fewer hands, it absolutely should be the case that those with wealth should be paying a more reasonable amount of taxation. So we now have the 40 wealthiest families in the UK who have more wealth between them than the least wealthy half of all British people. So
but isn't that an argument to try and keep those people here, Julia? Isn't that an argument to try and keep those people here and prevent them from taking their taxes, taking their wealth to other jurisdictions? Isn't that an argument against what you're arguing?
Well, I'm saying that I don't accept those figures.
Well, what figures are there? Do you think that no millionaires are leaving as a result of tax policy in this country?
I'm saying that I think roughly the same amount of millionaires are moving for a variety of reasons. Brexit, because they have reached a stage of their life where they want to move abroad to sunnier climes. That's always happened. I think a similar number of millionaires are moving, as have always moved. And I think that what's far more worrying is that we're losing skilled workers because we're not investing in our NHS. And I think what we need to look at is the economy.
But you need the millionaires to pay for the NHS, don't you, Julia?
Sorry?
You need the millionaires to pay for the NHS, or at least to contribute a huge amount to the NHS.
We do, and that's why we need to look at making our tax system fairer. So at the moment, we tax income from going out to work at a considerably higher rate than income from wealth. And that makes no logical sense, and it makes no fair sense.
That's because it's already been taxed.
Hang on. So is your proposal a wealth tax?
We have a number of proposals. You can look on our website. You can go on the website of Patriotic Millionaires UK, and you'll see 10 proposals. One of them is a wealth tax on wealth above £10 million. So
I hear this idea come up again and again and again, because it used to be in the OECD there were around a dozen countries with a wealth tax, none as high, I think, as you propose it. But the reason why so many countries have ditched their wealth taxes is that they didn't work.
Yep.
That these people with £10 million of assets, or actually it's probably more likely to be £20 million of assets, because couples generally, if they have a good accountant, split the money between the two of them. They are the most hypermobile people in the world. And whenever a country tries to implement a wealth tax that taxes the level of wealth that they have, they tend to leave. I think it's only 3 countries now that have a wealth tax: Norway, Spain and Switzerland. Switzerland is considered to be a tax haven by most people in the world because they don't have an inheritance tax, they don't have a capital gains tax, they instead have this wealth tax that actually is lower than the taxes that we have in this country. I mean, there's just nowhere around the world that this sort of tax works.
Actually, the system in Spain has raised a decent amount of money.
And it raises a pittance.
We can learn from what's happened. So there are ways in which this can be structured, and there's been detailed research carried out into how this can work. Like I said, that is one of 10 proposals. I don't think most of your viewers will think that it's fair when they go out to work really hard, that they are paying higher rates of tax on their income from work than people who are in a fortunate position to have wealth to invest are paying on their income
Yeah, I think our viewers are very concerned about how the taxes they pay are spent, to be honest. Julia Davies, thank you. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for that back and forth. Julia Davies, member of Patriotic Millionaires. I'm not convinced. I do think there are many a millionaire leaving this country for tax reasons, for crime reasons, for education reasons, for immigration reasons, all sorts of different reasons. Yeah. And they're stacking up.
Yeah, I think it stands to reason. I mean, you look at the Sunday Times rich list. Consistently on the richest family are the Hindujas. Now, wonderful people don't have the longest history in this country. If there's suddenly a wealth tax, will they choose to stay in this country or will they choose to leave? I mean, it stands to reason.
Yeah. Well, let us know your thoughts. Perhaps you don't care at all if millionaires leave, but it does mean that we'll probably have to pay more tax, so be careful.
But it's not just millionaires leaving. Some people choose to leave the country for a temporary period. That's called a holiday. And if you'd like one in Europe, here's the travel weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you or someone you know is heading further afield over the next few days, you can expect widespread sunshine across the Mediterranean, and it's going to be breezy for Greece. The usual seasonal wind blowing through the Greek islands as a result of heat building over Turkey. The heat builds over Italy and the Balearics during the next few days. We're going to see unusually high temperatures during Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's mostly fine across Iberia and into the Canary Islands, but you can see the temperature rise in Italy there up to the mid to high 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
OK, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Stick with us this afternoon because the billionaire Jeff Bezos has kicked off his wedding celebration with a foam party on a yacht, all right for some. But he's been forced to move his Venice celebrations, apparently, after protests threatened to disrupt it. Will the billionaire find a solution?
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, in the past few minutes, Meghan Markle has paid a sweet tribute to Princess Lilibet as she turns 4 today. It comes just a day after the Duchess of Sussex said she'd love to go into business with her daughter in the future.
Well, that's all it is, another money-making effort there. That's to make up for nobody buying her jam. I mean, do you really care if you see a picture of her kid or not? You do, that's it.
I'd like to see her face, to be honest.
I don't. Now, back to Diana, of course, who was a real star and style icon and whatever. And one day, I can remember, I complimented her on her outfit that she was wearing, and it was the same colour as the outfit you were wearing yesterday.
Bottle green?
No. RUC green, Royal Ulster Constabulary green, as she pointed out to me. She said, yes, RUC green, what do you think? And then she went into a whole, literally, sob story. She started crying about a bomb explosion there had been in Northern Ireland or whatever. She was very, very close, very connected with all of that. But, yeah, so...
And knowledgeable as well, by the sound of things.
She was very knowledgeable, yeah. And then she went on to talk about William and Harry going to school and how that upset her, and they went to boarding school or whatever it is. So we talked about all those things. And I forgot why I was going to tell you that story, but there was some reason. But she was... it was the same colour as what you were wearing yesterday, anyway, the green.
And she was so lovely by the sounds of things.
She was film star status. I mean, you just saw her in a room and you would go...
Wow.
She's special, yeah, she's special.
And I think whoever that was speaking in that report there saying, one of the designers, I think it was the designer of the wedding dress, saying it was just clothes or just a dress, but then Diana wore it and then it was something special. Absolutely. And it became part of history. And that's exactly what happened.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in,
This is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 minutes to 2. Now, the boss of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, has reportedly moved part of his lavish Venice wedding party after protests from angry locals.
Yeah, so he's been accused by residents of shutting down the city, threatening to flood the canals, and inflatable crocodiles to stop celebrity guests. So those are the plans from the activists.
Well, the activists have slammed the event as a symbol of inequality and over-tourism.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is Italian journalist Elena Trabottoni. Elena, thank you very much. So what's happened? Have they had to find a new location for this lavish wedding?
Yes, well, they've relocated to the Arsenale venue in Venice, and it's a fantastic venue. But, you know, there's lots of fantastic venues in Venice. But the peculiarity of the Arsenale location is that it's extremely difficult to break into. So that obviously, was a big bonus point for them. Originally, they were supposed to hold one of the big celebrations on the 28th of June at the Misericordia church and venue. And of course, that was changed after many protesters came down onto the city, onto the historic lagoon city, and actually, voiced concerns and laid down on the street and pulled out billboards and actually draped out signs and protests onto St. Mark's Square about really not so much the wedding itself, because as weddings go, it's quite small by number. There's only 200 guests coming in. But the real protest is about, the symbolism of the owner and founder of Amazon coming in and taking over Venice, in a sense, for 3 days and turning it into, his nuptials location, his luxury nuptials location.
I mean, some people just have so much money, don't they? Elena Trabottoni, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for zooming in to us from Italy. Fantastic stuff.
I think I can't get angry about Jeff Bezos. He's a guy that started off selling books. He grew his business. It's a useful business.
But it's in the entitlement, isn't it, of shutting down a whole beautiful town for your wedding nuptials. Anyway, lots more coming up. Stick with us. Let us know what you think about the billionaire's wedding plans. Why not?
And, of course, much more on Israel after this.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mixed bag today, fairly cloudy, some rain in places and still quite breezy, but parts of the southeast in particular seeing some warm sunshine. Here's the bigger picture. Low pressure sitting to the north. This tangle of weather fronts has been edging its way in across the country. This cold front will bring some rain to southern Scotland and Northern Ireland around the middle of the day, but as that clears away, it should turn drier here later on. Staying fairly dull and damp over the Pennines. A little bit of rain at times getting into parts of Yorkshire too. Much of the south looking dry, and parts of East Wales, the Midlands, towards East Anglia, seeing some warm but humid sunshine. Temperatures in this zone getting up to 25, 26 degrees as possible. Through the evening time, we'll continue to see a little bit of that rain tracking south into northern England. Always showers coming into western parts of Scotland. Probably not too many getting into the east coast. Staying largely fine here and turning a bit drier and brighter through the afternoon and evening through the central belt and across Northern Ireland. Staying mostly cloudy, but the rain should start to ease. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going over northern England, parts of West Wales, but much of Wales, central and southern England having a fine evening. Still quite breezy, however. That breeze will continue to ease down overnight, and the rain will continue to trickle its way southwards. Parts of Wales having a damp night, some patchy rain still over northern England, maybe heading into the Midlands, and some scattered showers in western Scotland. But many eastern areas have having a dry night for sure. Temperatures holding up in double figures, holding up in the mid-teens across a good part of England and Wales. So quite a warm, humid feel here again tomorrow. Rain and drizzle at times in South Wales, maybe affecting parts of the West Midlands. But for many, I suspect it'll be a dry day tomorrow and a better chance of seeing some sunny spells, especially for North Wales. Northern England looking a lot brighter too. The odd shower in western Scotland. And it's really quite warm and humid, and the chance of some thunderstorms coming up to the south later tomorrow.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 24th of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
I'm Emily Carver.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
A visibly furious Donald Trump condemns Israel and Iran as both countries violate that ceasefire agreement. Reports suggest that for now, further strikes have been prevented.
Well, to a degree, we've had 1 or 2 munitions that appear to have been dropped by the Israelis on a radar installation near Tehran. But President Trump believes the ceasefire will hold.
And Sir Keir Starmer says he will press forward with welfare cuts despite a massive looming rebellion from his own Labour MPs. It comes with reports that as many as 108 will defy the Prime Minister next week.
Sir Keir Starmer faces the biggest challenge of his time as Prime Minister. He's pushing ahead with benefit reforms hated by over 100 of his own MPs. The vote's next Tuesday. Who will blink first?
And asylum seekers have been told by police to treat women with respect and not to harass them. All as part of a presentation on UK culture. Is our broken asylum system leaving women and girls at risk?
And Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, she says Britain should look at replicating a controversial Danish ghetto law that would allow officials to tear down social housing in immigrant-dominated neighbourhoods to promote assimilation.
And the Reform Party's Richard Tice is calling for a new law to allow members of the public to mount mass appeals against punishments they deem to be too severe. The idea is to prevent more people like Lucy Connolly being sent to prison as she was for a tweet.
And the new National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park based off her famous wedding tiara. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker is there for us.
Now, huge goings-on in world affairs, of course. We're so far seeing this ceasefire that was momentarily broken and caused some pretty outrageous remarks. Well, outrageous, I'm sure, in the minds of some, from the President of the United States. But the question is, will that hold now that there has been an Israeli strike and an Iranian strike? Is that going to be it? Or
I think we've learned that Israel will act alone and will defy, to a great extent, Donald Trump's commands. So that puts us in an interesting place, doesn't it? Interested to get your thoughts on everything at home. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so.
But of course, also, the government is facing a big rebellion on its fairly minor reforms to disability benefits. They want to slow down the rate that we increase the amount that we're spending on these disability benefits.
Yeah, 108 Labour MPs, we're hearing, are waiting to rebel on this. The vote happening next week. Is this a massive shock to Keir Starmer's authority? He insists he's going to continue on, press ahead with these very unpopular changes within his own party. But let's get the headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you. The top stories: Donald Trump says Israel is not going to attack Iran and that all planes will turn around and head home, adding that nobody will be hurt and the ceasefire is in effect. However, the Israeli army radio says its military has attacked an Iranian radar site near Tehran. Since that coming from President Trump, the deputy head of the intelligence of Iran's police was reportedly killed in the attack. The US president had reportedly asked Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack Iran, to which the Israeli prime minister reportedly said he could not cancel that attack and that some response was needed to Iran's violation of their ceasefire. Speaking to reporters, Mr. Trump said he didn't like that Israel unloaded right after they agreed to that ceasefire, blaming both Israel and Iran. Mr. Trump has also warned Israel do not drop those bombs and says if they do, it's a major violation.
One rocket that I guess was fired overboard, it was after the time limit and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
Leaders from NATO are gathering in the Netherlands, with the Prime Minister and President Trump both attending. At the summit, Sir Keir Starmer is due to announce an increase in defence spending to 5% of GDP, but not until 2035, but without promising any additional cash. 32 member countries, including the UK, are expected to agree to the 5% goal, with 3.5% to go on core defence and the remaining 1.5% on defence-related areas such as resilience and security. The government's intention to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP has been branded as hollow and unfunded by Reform UK. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has said every element of society must be mobilised towards a collective national effort to keep the UK safe. In a foreword to the National Security Strategy, he said Russian aggression menaces our continent. The government said the UK needed to be more competitive and robust in science, education, trade and technology. The summit will be Mark Rutte's first as the Secretary-General of NATO. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, the former Dutch Prime Minister said the 5% spending commitment was a quantum leap that's ambitious, historic and fundamental to securing our future. New figures show that grocery prices are now 4.7% more expensive than a year ago as supermarket inflation hit its highest level since March last year. The figure is up from 4.1% last month, which was a rise from 3.8% in April, according to data from Kantar. Price rises didn't stop British consumers from making 490 million trips to the supermarket over the last month, averaging almost 17 per household, and the highest recorded by Kantar since March 2020. Women who have delayed coming forward for cervical screening will be offered a test to be taken at home, NHS England says. The DIY test kits will be available from January. The test is for HPV, which causes most cervical cancers, and women between the ages of 25 and 64 are offered it every few years. The Department for Health and Social Care in England said the scheme would tackle deeply entrenched barriers that keep women away from cervical screening. Just 68% of women currently take up the offer of a screening. And Wimbledon plan to honour Sir Andy Murray with a statue at the All England Club. Murray, the Wimbledon men's singles champion in 2013 and 2016, retired last year and will be involved in designing the sculpture. Wimbledon hopes the statue will be revealed in 2027 during the championship's 150th anniversary. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3607 and €1.1725. The price of gold is £2,435.37 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,792 points. Done.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2. Now, the Prime Minister says he will press forward with welfare cuts. Well, not really cuts, are they? With reducing the amount that is increased being spent.
They will
on
cut.
welfare.
Well, they will cut benefits for some individuals.
Well, they're restricting the eligibility criteria, but the amount we're spending on disability benefits is still scheduled to rise by £8 billion.
Overall, yes, but there will be some individuals who will see their individual benefits cut. But yes, we're still going to be spending a lot on welfare.
A lot more.
Anyway, it comes with reports that as many as 108 MPs will defy the Prime Minister next week. So his own backbenchers defying his commands. Sound like something we've been reporting on?
It sounds a little bit like it. Let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, because, Christopher, this is a real and present problem for the Prime Minister. I mean, to many people's eyes, this welfare reform, I mean, it's scheduled to save £5 billion a year, but it's still going to be increasing the budget by £8 billion a year. I mean, it was going to increase by 12, now it's just going to increase by 8. I mean, if the government can't even get this past its own backbenchers, the Prime Minister's authority is shot to bits.
Tom, you're exactly right. An absolute blow here, I think, for the Prime Minister. He's not even got past his one-year anniversary of that huge landslide won last year by his party. This is called the Universal Credit and Personal Independent Payment Bill. It's meant to cut about $5 billion off benefits cuts. But as you say, that bill is growing anyway by as much as $12 billion in the next 12 months or so. There's a reasoned amendment backed by 108 MPs, 13 select committee chairs. They say it should be pulled, the whole bill should be pulled, and they want to go back to it. I've got the amendment here. It makes a lot of demands here of the government. It asks for example, they say that there's been no formal consultation with disabled people. The rebels say that there should be the impact statement or analysis by the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, should be published first before it comes out. They say that reviews from Sir Charlie Mayfield, of course, a former, I think, a John Lewis executive, he's reviewing the role of employers and government in boosting disabled benefits work rights. That should come out first. There should be a further review of PIP. That should come out first. What is happening here is Labour MPs are saying it's rushed, it's ill thought through. Let's look at why we're doing and who's being hurt by this. They claim here that 250,000 people will be pushed into poverty, including 50,000 children. Each one of those lines in the amendment, I read them out to the PM spokesman today in the briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. They push back on each of them. They are going to push ahead with these plans. They are not listening to what the rebels are saying. As things stand now, we are seeing Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary. She is meeting with Labour MPs to try and save these welfare reforms. They're called engaging with colleagues. But Number 10, in fact, told us that the PM told his cabinet this morning that the changes will restore hope to those on benefits that are trapping millions, abandoning them without hope and opportunity. The government, he said, wants to build a welfare system that's strong and stable. The current system is failing people. You're seeing there with the PM on screen. It is a big worry here for the Prime Minister. It's not expected. It wasn't really. We knew there was a rumbling of concern about this bill next week, but not this scale. And as things stand, we're told by government sources, the bill is scheduled to go ahead and will be voted next week. So it's all about this document here. Yeah. This is the one published in the order paper. I've been through these areas, these concerns by the rebels. Each one's been knocked back by the government. What's fascinating, by the way, Tom and Emily, is tomorrow at Prime Minister's Questions, we'll see Angela Rayner, who's the Deputy Prime Minister, answering questions from MPs. Now, we're told that the government, the cabinet, is fully behind these plans. Some might question whether Angela Rayner is.
Christopher, just slightly confused by the timing of all of this. How come we're seeing the amendments today, published overnight, when the second reading and vote isn't till next Tuesday, is it?
It's not, and normally we hear the plans the following week on a Thursday. I think that's because it's a week before the bill, and because this is what's called a reasoned amendment, that is an amendment which will kill the whole bill. It will not allow the second reading to take place. Therefore, MPs can't vote on the principle of the legislation, and to do that, they count back, I think, 7 days and pass it. I should add, by the way, my opinion, part of the problem here is Sir Keir Starmer is not in Parliament much. That building behind you hasn't seen Sir Keir Starmer do a PMQs for a week or so, more than that now. I think that the concern's going to be, if you were in Parliament more often, Sir Keir Starmer, you would know about these problems. Last week he was away at the G7 summit. This week he's away at the NATO summit. He's not being seen around. Never hear Keir is often trending. And I think, yes, we haven't yet seen his G7 statement. That was due yesterday. It may happen later this week. But if the PM spent more time amongst his MPs, he might understand the scale of concern and deal with these issues. As things stand, this government, the cabinet led by Sir Keir Starmer, is facing itself against a huge rebellion, a really, really big rebellion by his own MPs, barely not even a year after the landslide.
Are you suggesting that he's running scared or just enjoying some time away from MPs and some of the issues here domestically?
I'm not saying he should miss the NATO summit. I'm not saying he should miss the G7 summit. Those are important things, but I just question why he wasn't in Parliament on Monday doing the G7 statement. One may happen in the future. We'll wait and see. It's being said to us, where's the PM? And I think, not least being in the tea rooms, the rooms where all the MPs gather, finding out what's disturbing them, what the concerns are, and facing down these concerns. 13 select committee chairs signing this amendment. I've never seen anything like this in my time covering politics against a sitting Prime Minister.
It's a bit like when Boris Johnson was away in India, and that is when Parliament ended up voting for the Standards Committee investigation into Boris Johnson. Right. Very often, when a Prime Minister is away, the mice do play.
Well, Tom, I was there, and I couldn't believe that was ancient history back in 2022. But I could not believe when the whips didn't oppose that measure and did not oppose the appointment of Harriet Harman to run that committee. As soon as that happened, I knew the game was up for him.
Gosh, seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Christopher Hope, thank you so much, GB News political editor. Gosh, yes, do you look fondly back on the Partygate saga? Goodness me.
I mean, I don't want to dwell on this, but there are some parallels between... Do you remember the number of U-turns Boris Johnson had to make?
Yeah.
And then that sort of shot his authority as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And we are seeing a number of U-turns from this Prime Minister.
And he spent a lot of time in Ukraine, didn't he? As a result?
Yes, and it emboldens the backbenchers in terms of saying, you know what, we've forced him to U-turn on this, why don't we force him to U-turn on that too?
Yeah.
And then the authority just starts to melt away.
Yes, well, in other news, we're going to return to the Middle East because Donald Trump has expressed fury at both Iran and Israel. He said both sides have violated the ceasefire agreement only hours after it was agreed.
Well, he told Israel to calm down, later saying IDF warplanes en route to bomb Iran would turn around. But of course, some of them didn't. Let's take a look at what the president had to say a little bit earlier on.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, OK, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Well, as you can see, we had to beep out a word there because of obvious reasons. Clearly a very furious Donald Trump. In the studio with us is Mark White, our Home Security editor, who's been following all the very latest from this. Donald Trump was furious earlier. He's then told us that Israel was not going to send any of these bombs over to Iran. It looks like they have, but perhaps a scaled-back version of an intervention.
Yes, I mean, it seems to be a radar installation that was attacked because we're told that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in that phone call with Donald Trump, and I'm sure some more choice words may have been used in that, told Donald Trump that he couldn't call off the attack completely. There had to be a response to the missiles, apparently. They're talking plural now in terms of missiles that came over from Iran. Basically a timescale of events and an explanation, perhaps, of why Donald Trump was so exasperated is that he brokered a ceasefire that was due to come into effect at 7 a.m. Local time in Israel. But at 3 a.m., Israel launched a very significant, devastating attack on Iran, particularly targeting Tehran and targeting regime infrastructure, and apparently, we're told, killing hundreds of members of the Basij, the militia that the Iranians use to such devastating effect, often against their own population. This, it's seen, of course, as being perhaps a move by Israel to try to destabilise the regime with a view maybe to regime change. But anyway, that devastating attack that took place at 3 a.m. or was launched at 3 a.m. local time in Israel was then followed by a strike from Iran. And that strike from Iran that took place shortly before the ceasefire was due to come into place involved some 14 ballistic missiles that were launched from Iran. And one of those actually struck an apartment block in the city of Beersheba in the south of Israel, causing the deaths of 4 people, dozens of others to be injured. Then the ceasefire took hold at 7 a.m. At 7:06, 6 minutes into the ceasefire, we got a missile, ballistic missile, launched by the Iranians towards Israel. That landed, well, it didn't land, it was taken out by Israel's defence systems.
This caused that level of consternation. Do stay with us, Mark. I'm just hearing that we've got an interview from our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, with the Prime Minister moments ago at that NATO meeting in The Hague. Let's listen in.
Prime Minister, hugely concerning times. You've announced a massive increase in defence and security spending to 5% because, let's face it, of Donald Trump. Will you level with GB News viewers on the tough choices you're going to have to make? Because how on earth are you going to pay for it? You're going to have to put up taxes, surely, or make quite deep cuts.
Let me first of all reassure your viewers that the first duty of the UK Prime Minister is the safety and security of our citizens, and that's a duty I take extremely seriously. We've already increased our defence spend to 2.5% in 2027, and I've been absolutely clear where the money for that comes from. We've cut the overseas development aid budget. And we will now make commitments, our NATO commitments, to 5%. That includes a resilience element that we're already spending, but it is important that we make that commitment for the long-term security of our country. We had a commitment, to reassure your viewers, in our manifesto that we wouldn't raise taxes on working people, and we intend to keep to that commitment.
And also on welfare, you've got over 100 Labour MPs now demanding you change course over the cuts to the welfare budget. They're concerned that the government doesn't look like it cares about the most vulnerable people. Are you going to change course? What's your message to them?
The principles I brought to this are that those that need protection must have protection and support. Those that can work should work and should be helped into work. But we must have a welfare system fit for the future, and the current model doesn't work. It desperately needs reform. It leaves people trapped and not able to get into work, and so we need to reform it, and that's what we will do.
Well, there you go. The Prime Minister speaking both about the situation in the Middle East and, of course, domestic issues at home with regards to that welfare bill, which could see a massive Labour rebellion. Big thanks to Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, for grabbing that interview. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's much more to come on today's programme. Indeed, this is a really interesting one. The Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch says that Britain should look at replicating a very controversial Danish ghetto law, which basically allows officials to tear down social housing that's too immigrant-dominated, that isn't assimilating, and either privatise some of that social housing or just knock it down, all to promote assimilation. But after the break, asylum seekers in this country have been told by police to treat women with respect and not harass them. Yes, as part of a presentation, a PowerPoint on UK culture. Is our broken asylum system leaving women and girls in danger?
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now, experts are warning that lithium suppliers will not keep up with the demand for electric cars.
Yeah, researchers say domestic lithium production could grow as much by about 10 times what it currently is by 2030, but will still fall short of demand.
So this morning we're asking whether Labour's green car policy is unachievable.
This policy tells you everything you need to know about net zero. This isn't about giving people free choices about the technologies they want to use. This is about saying we're going to have mandatory targets. It's a sad indictment on our country if we've just normalised the government making these fundamental decisions for people's lives. The CEBR has warned that this policy might cost the country that's rigid targets for battery electric vehicles known as the ZEV mandate 80% of all vehicles will have to be electric vehicles by 2030, rising to 100% by 2035. And that policy is expected to cost £400 billion to the UK economy. And of course, car makers as well have warned that this policy is not achievable.
The latest stats say 47% of vehicles sold in Britain are now EVs. We're halfway there after just 2 years of the electric mandate. We've another 5 years to go. It's speeding up. And this charge that lithium, we're going to have a shortage of lithium, is nonsense. What it says is that there may be the consumption of lithium is increasing, so the domestic production will not be sufficient, but there's plenty in the world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 2. Now, migrant hotels across Britain are being used as hubs for illegal delivery rider jobs, with asylum seekers taking up dark economy work, just hours after arriving in the country.
Yes, and illegal migrants are, of course, based in taxpayer-funded hotels. But, so they may have free board, and they can also earn £1,000 every week for delivery firms like Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats.
Joining us now is immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal. Harjap, thanks so much for making the time for us this afternoon. This is, of course, flagrantly in breach of law that we've had since the early 2000s, that asylum seekers cannot work. It's meant to deter asylum seekers from coming to this country. But clearly it looks like many of them, perhaps many thousands of them, are actually working in the dark economy as soon as they arrive.
Yeah, it's no secret that asylum seekers, many of them do work on the side, many in cash and hand jobs, and also since the advent of the gig economy as such, many using other people's accounts, working for companies, or not actually for companies, but being paid by companies such as Uber, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat. And because of this, the government in March, at the end of March and the start of April, already announced a crackdown on this. And 3 of those companies who are named gave statements saying, well, we will cooperate with the government and crack down. How far that's gone, we don't know yet. There's been no figures on it. There's been no evidence that there is, in fact, a crackdown. The checks are pretty easy to do for employers. You can go online and do a check and see if someone's got permission to work or not. But the problem is that people are opening accounts, people who are residents here and British people, and they're letting these other people use their IDs and accounts as a way to get paid. This also happens in the construction industry and in the courier industry. So it's quite prevalent, I would say, and the government really needs to do something. It's indicated that it will. How long it will take to do it, you know, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I do wonder if there are some people turning a blind eye to this, because when you see delivery bags and bicycles outside a migrant hotel, it's pretty obvious what's going on. Surely it would only take a few police officers to go in and sort it out.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know whether the blind eye is being turned or not, because if these people weren't doing the jobs, and who would, or whether it's just incompetence and whether it will take just too much policing or too much Home Office staff who are already under a backlog, as we know, backlog with a number of appeals, number of cases, and are just overworked. And we know they're incompetent as well on top of that, and that it's not fit for purpose. However, it does seem that this is a loophole that is being exploited. And if migrants see that they'll be allowed to work, that is a pull factor. That will be a pull factor for other migrants to come in. That is a selling point for the gangs once again. Yeah. I'll go to England, they'll put you up in a hotel, claim asylum, and you can work on the side. And we'll have all of this set for you. It just shows how sophisticated the gangs are and how ahead of the policing and the government they are, and you know what needs to be done. But while you have these pull factors here, I can't see small boat crossings stop at any time. And that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing the numbers go down. This is the thorn in Labour side. It was a thorn in Conservative side since COVID, and now it's a thorn in Labour side. They've done everything else.
It's almost like a double pull factor. It's not just the fact that they're able to work, but also all of the free stuff that's provided because we pretend they're not available to work is still provided.
Crazy.
I do want to bring up, though, this other story that we've seen breaking in the news today, which suggests that there are presentations now being given to some of these asylum seekers across hotels across the country, basically saying you need to treat women with respect. You need to not take photographs of women in the streets or harass people for their mobile phone numbers. I mean, is this the government admitting that many, perhaps a majority of the people coming across on these small boats just come from an utterly alien culture with a completely different attitude towards women and how to be a gentleman in society?
Well, you know, cultures are different throughout the world, and it's not an east sort of west sort of thing. I mean, there is concern in people that, you know, that people are being harassed. And if there's reports of that, the government has to do something. Instead of arresting someone, they're thinking, right, from point one, we'll tell them you're in our country now. These are the laws you have to abide by. It doesn't matter where you've come from. You know, the laws are different in every single country. If you go to a country like America, they're different in every single state. I mean, in America, in some states, they even allow child marriages. And you would think, when people hear about that and about America, you think, really? But actually, when you research it, you find, oh, yeah, they do in about 30-odd states. So it's all about education. I always say it doesn't matter what the problem is. The answer is education in this. And obviously, the government don't want a problem to escalate. So they're trying to think prevention is...
OK, well, Harjap Singh Bengal, thank you very much indeed, immigration lawyer. Tommy, I just want to draw attention to this story that you're talking about, give people a bit more detail on it, because essentially... This is according to The Telegraph. Police officers have drawn up PowerPoint presentations for asylum seekers in hotels on key points to do with UK culture. And how you treat women features highly in this presentation, warning migrants to show equal respect to both sexes, pleading with asylum seekers not to harass or abuse women. Now, Harjap there says it's for the police to try and educate these people and tell them about the laws of the land. But I would question, why on earth are authorities allowing people into this country who potentially need to be told not to harass women in the street? What do you think, Tom?
I'm fairly stunned that you need a PowerPoint presentation given to you to learn not to harass women, to learn not to go after women, to learn to treat people with equal respect. That somehow now needs to be taught to people. Tom. I mean, doesn't that say everything about perhaps the quality of people who are coming over in those small boats?
Well, and so some of the points are, in the presentation, respect other people's rights and freedoms, human rights. Females have the same rights as men. They must be treated with respect and courtesy. If you harass or abuse any female, you can be arrested. Certain swear words can cause great insult, and violence of any kind is not acceptable.
Hang on, these people are coming across with mobile phones, posting TikTok videos in the boats, and yet we're all pretending that they simply don't understand that women have equal rights to men in this country. I'm starting to think that maybe that's not a comprehension issue, maybe that's an attitudinal issue.
Yeah, and be aware that taking photos and videos, Tom, of any people without their permission can cause great offence. So there you go, this PowerPoint presentation to you know, try and improve integration in our migrant hotels, Tom.
I'm sure it will take a PowerPoint presentation. That's exactly how integration will... We've solved it. Hooray, hooray, everyone. We're one happy family again.
Presumably it'd have to be translated into various languages. Anyway, in relation to the previous story I was speaking about the delivery riders, Deliveroo has said we have a dedicated team in place to ensure Deliveroo does not work with riders who do not have a right to work in the UK. We're consistently strengthening our controls against misuse of our platform. With further measures in development, all riders, including substitutes, must complete right-to-work checks, which we are robust in monitoring with daily identity verification, and most recently, additional checks when a rider logs in using a new device. OK.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more coming on today's programme, including the new National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park based off her famous wedding tiara. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker will be there.
But after the break, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says Britain should look at replicating a controversial Danish ghetto law, allowing officials to tear down social housing in ghettoised areas, apparently to promote assimilation. That's next.
Thank you. The headlines at 2:30. The Israeli army radio says its military has attacked an Iranian radar site near Tehran after Donald Trump said Israel was not going to attack Iran. Mr. Trump criticised both countries, blaming them both for breaking the ceasefire earlier today.
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong.
Keir Starmer's to announce an increase in defence spending to 5% of GDP, but not until 2035 at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. The government published its national security strategy, which said the UK needed to be more competitive and robust in trade and technology. New figures show that grocery prices are now 4.7% more expensive than a year ago as supermarket inflation hit its highest level since March last year. And Amazon says it'll invest £40 billion in the UK over the next 3 years as it creates thousands more jobs and opens 4 new warehouses. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mixed bag today, fairly cloudy, some rain in places and still quite breezy, but parts of the southeast in particular seeing some warm sunshine. Here's the bigger picture. Low pressure sitting to the north. This tangle of weather fronts has been edging its way in across the country. This cold front will bring some rain to southern Scotland and Northern Ireland around the middle of the day, but as that clears away, it should turn drier here later on. Staying fairly dull and damp over the Pennines. A little bit of rain at times getting into parts of Yorkshire too. Much of the south looking dry, and parts of East Wales, the Midlands, towards East Anglia seeing some warm but humid sunshine. Temperatures in this zone getting up to 25, 26 degrees as possible. Through the evening time, we'll continue to see a little bit of that rain tracking south into northern England. Always showers coming into western parts of Scotland. Probably not too many getting into the east coast. Staying largely fine here and turning a bit drier and brighter through the afternoon and evening through the central belt and across Northern Ireland. Staying mostly cloudy, but the rain should start to ease. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going over northern England, parts of West Wales, but much of Wales, central and southern England having a fine evening. Still quite breezy, however. That breeze will continue to ease down overnight, and the rain will continue to trickle its way southwards. Parts of Wales having a damp night, some patchy rain still over northern England, maybe heading into the Midlands, and some scattered showers in western Scotland. But many eastern areas having a dry night for sure. Temperatures holding up in double figures, holding up in the mid-teens across a good part of England and Wales. So quite a warm, humid feel here again tomorrow. Rain and drizzle at times in South Wales, maybe affecting parts of the West Midlands, but for many, I suspect it'll be a dry day tomorrow and a better chance of seeing some sunny spells, especially for North Wales. Northern England looking a lot brighter too. The odd shower in western Scotland. And it's really quite warm and humid, and the chance of some thunderstorms coming up to the south later tomorrow.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists on the M8 westbound at junction 9 on slip should follow signed diversion routes due to roadworks. Cardiff's M4 westbound between junction 30 Cardiff Gate and junction 32 Corriton closes from 8 tonight. On the M606 southbound, an accident at junction 2 in Bradford has closed all lanes, expected to clear by 2:45 this afternoon. In Derbyshire, a collision on the M1 northbound between junction 29A and junction 30 has left one lane closed. And on the trains, disruptions continue with Chiltern Railways between Birmingham, Snow Hill and Dorridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 20 minutes to 3 o'clock, and the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says she's considering a controversial Danish law to redevelop immigrant-majority housing areas in the UK, as the Danes do in Denmark.
Yeah, so it's a so-called ghetto law, and it allows the demolition of social housing in deprived areas, which house over 50% non-Western residents.
Well, critics call it discriminatory, but Badenoch argues the UK needs to aim for much more active assimilation policies.
Well, joining us to discuss this is Associate Professor at Roskilde University, Troels Schultz Larsen. Thank you very much for joining us on this. Just want to get an idea of what this law actually is and what's happening in Denmark.
Well, very briefly, we can say that this law focuses on a specific number of housing estate that live up to criterions based on number of people who are convicted for crimes, number of non-Western immigrants, people, a certain share of people who have no further education beyond public school, number of unemployed and poverty rates. So if you have these a certain amounts of if you live up to these criterions, you will be on a yearly published list that will then provoke a number of initiatives being implemented.
Oh, this is fascinating. So every year a list is drawn up of these sort of sinker states, we might call them in the UK. You might call them ghettos, where there is higher crime, less native assimilation, all of these different metrics that you say. But then what happens? If you're on the list, some of these houses are privatised, some of the estates are knocked down. What else happens?
Well, first of all, it's not the actual crime level. It's the level of people convicted for crime, so they may have committed the crimes elsewhere. It's based on where they live. So many of these places don't actually have that much crime in itself. But apart from that, if you have been on the list for 5 consecutive years, then you will be designated parallel society, and then you have to live up to further number of criterions, including the fact that 60% of the housing units will have to be sold off, changed for another purpose, or demolished.
Has it been successful in mixing people up a bit?
Not really. No, it has not. The major problem being that actually I mean, you don't solve the underlying social problems by discriminating based on address, and you don't really solve the underlying problems by demolition or displacement of people. There has been a number of very successful policies in Denmark, but they are actually related very much to our welfare state and to massive social investments and to long-term area-based initiatives. Actually, there is a wide agreement in the research community and those who actually deal with these problems that the lists is actually causing more problems than it solves.
But Denmark also has incredibly low migration numbers by European standards, very low acceptance of asylum seekers in the first place. I suppose that also feeds into this idea of a more homogenous social fabric.
Well, depends if I think Denmark is actually quite the standard, so it depends on who you compares with. So I mean, and it's been changing over the years. So for the past years, we have been tightening immigration policies. But if you look back to the 90s and early 2000s, there were quite a lot of immigration. So does that change things? Well, each country has different histories of migration. The UK, France, Spain have great links with former colonies where there are certain obligations from people from Commonwealth who have been allowed into the country over time. So, and Denmark has Greenland, but with a limited number of people. So actually, in the Danish case, migration has more been driven by labor market actors, sorts of large industries need for labor.
OK, well, it's very interesting to hear the Danish perspective. Troels Schultz Larsen, thank you very much indeed, Associate Professor at Roskilde University.
Well, perhaps you'd like to visit Denmark, or maybe somewhere a little bit further south, perhaps somewhere a little bit more sunny. If you do, here's the travel weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you or someone you know is heading further afield over the next few days, you can expect widespread sunshine across the Mediterranean, and it's going to be breezy for Greece. The usual seasonal wind blowing through the Greek islands as a result of heat building over Turkey. The heat builds over Italy and the Balearics during the next few days. We're going to see unusually high temperatures during Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's mostly fine across Iberia and into the Canary Islands, but you can see the temperature rise in Italy there up to the mid to high 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 to 3. Now, the National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park, designed by Norman Foster.
Yes, the translucent bridge will be inspired by the tiara the Queen wore on her wedding day.
But let's get more now from St James's Park with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's the memorial going to be like?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, the wait is finally over. We have the final design from the renowned architect Lord Foster, who famously once criticised the King for his views on architecture. But of course, today it's all about honouring Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. On that theme, at Marlborough Gate, which is the big gate you see behind me, which overlooks the Mall, that's going to be renamed Queen Elizabeth II Place. And there is, according to the artist impression, going to be a big statue of Queen Elizabeth II right riding a horse overlooking the Mall. Of course, incredibly poignant because she had a deep love of all things equine, but also, of course, marching down the Mall on several occasions throughout the year, trooping the colour in big state occasions such as coronations. The soldiers will get to see that statue as well as the viewing public. So that is the first bit of Queen Elizabeth II's memorial. And then this bridge, we come to the Blue Bridge in the middle of St James's Park, overlooking Buckingham Palace over the pond here, and this entire bridge is going. They're going to get rid of it and they're going to replace it with a new bridge. One of the reasons perhaps as to why they're doing it is the view you get over the bridge of Buckingham to attract lots and lots of tourists here to this bridge. So it's going to be replaced by a big glass bridge which is going to look like the tiara of the Queen when she was Princess Elizabeth upon her marriage to Prince Philip. That tiara famously actually snapped on the morning of her wedding and had to be quickly rushed off to the reattached and fixed ahead of the wedding in Westminster Abbey. Incredibly poignant, of course, as well, significant love between Prince Philip and the late Queen. It's going to apparently, according to the architect, or hinted by the architect, light up at night as well, which is meant to symbolise all the diamonds that were part of that tiara. And the Queen famously also gave it to her granddaughter, loaned it to her granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, for her wedding in 2020. And then we come to the final part of St James's Park's Queen Elizabeth II's memorial, and that is going to be right here at the other end of the park, overlooking Birdcage Walk, going to be renamed Prince Philip Gates, because a new statue of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip is going to be erected at the other side of St James's Park. It's meant to be them, according to the artist's impressions, in their younger years, but there is going to be a meandering family of gardens also put in St James's Park here. The whole idea behind it is it's going to be a light touch, so they don't want big building works going on as this memorial is being erected. It's meant to happen in time for what would have been Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday, which is scheduled, of course, for April 2026. And on that theme, the whole bridge is going to be constructed elsewhere, and then apparently it's going to be floated down the River Thames to Westminster and then secretly installed overnight. So the public are really not going to notice what has happened until the next morning. That's the plan. It's a big ambition, and of course it's going to cost a lot of money to do all of this. A sculpture has not yet been assigned to create the two statues either side of the park, but if you look at the artist's impression, and if you're watching on television, you can see a few pictures on your screen. It should be quite a fitting tribute to Britain's longest reigning monarch.
Oh, thank you, Cameron Walker, for bringing us that report from St James's Park. What a perfect antidote to all the distressing news we've been reporting on today. Thank you so much, Cameron Walker, there in St James's Park in central London.
Absolutely. Great to get a real vision of that. So I mean, that bridge is always blooming busy. It's always completely chock-a-block with tourists. So having a bit of a wider bridge there, perhaps a practical as well as a fitting tribute.
It's a lovely park, isn't it?
Well, that's it from us today on Good Afternoon Britain. But Martin Daubney is up next. And Martin, what's coming up?
Well, I'll be joined by a columnist from the Mail today who says, what's the point of Sir Keir Starmer as he faces his biggest rebellion to date over benefits and still sitting on the fence over Iran, plus an astonishing exclusive. I'll be joined in the studio by Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, who this morning visited political prisoner Lucy Connolly at HMP Peterborough. She says she's been manhandled in prison and received injuries, and Mr Tice believes that is a politically motivated manhandling. Mr Tice will join me in the studio for the full Inside Skinny on that. Plus £1,000 a week for illegal immigrants working on Deliveroo bikes. Is it time to delete our delivery apps to make them listen and say no more? Enough is enough. That's all on my show, 3 till 6 p.m. But first, here's your weather forecast.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Bit of a mixed bag today, fairly cloudy. Some rain in places and still quite breezy, but parts of the southeast in particular seeing some warm sunshine. Here's the bigger picture. Low pressure sitting to the north. This tangle of weather fronts has been edging its way in across the country. This cold front will bring some rain to southern Scotland and Northern Ireland around the middle of the day, but as that clears away, it should turn drier here later on. Staying fairly dull and damp over the Pennines. A little bit of rain at times getting into parts of Yorkshire too. Much of the south looking dry, and parts of East Wales, the Midlands, towards East Anglia seeing some warm but humid sunshine. Temperatures in this zone getting up to 25, 26 degrees as possible. Through the evening time, we'll continue to see a little bit of that rain tracking south into northern England. Always showers coming into western parts of Scotland. Probably not too many getting into the east coast. Staying largely fine here and turning a bit drier and brighter through the afternoon and evening through the central belt and across Northern Ireland. Staying mostly cloudy, but the rain should start to ease. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going over northern England, parts of West Wales, but much of Wales, central and southern England having a fine evening. Still quite breezy, however. That breeze will continue to ease down overnight, and the rain will continue to trickle its way southwards. Parts of Wales having a damp night, some patchy rain still over northern England, maybe heading into the Midlands, and some scattered showers in western Scotland. But many eastern areas having a dry night for sure. Temperatures holding up in double figures, holding up in the mid-teens across a good part of England and Wales. So quite a warm, humid feel here again tomorrow. Rain and drizzle at times in South Wales, maybe affecting parts of the West Midlands, but for many, I suspect it'll be a dry day tomorrow and a better chance of seeing some sunny spells, especially for North Wales. Northern England looking a lot brighter too. The odd shower in western Scotland, and it's really quite warm and humid, and the chance of some thunderstorms coming up to the south later tomorrow.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Back in 2015, Thornton and Cleveley's resident Emma Shepherd noticed the grass in her garden wasn't growing.